LoveLore Library. Chapter 582. She was somewhat surprised by her reaction. You have caught a cold, where do you want to go? Do you know that you really scared this servant last night? My whole body was as hot as a stove and this servant was worried that you would explode. Shin Yueji stared at her for a while. Why did Ben Gong have a fever last night? Perhaps it's because your ladyship is always running around at night and caught a cold from the wind. Shin Yueji did not refute. Ben Gong went to Xianghe Palace to have a look. In the past, if this happened in Ben Gong's Feng Qi Palace, the Empress would have kindly come over to express her condolences. Such a big thing happened in the Shin family and Ben Gong has been taken care of by the Empress since I entered the palace. No matter what, I have to go and perform. Shuangxi almost couldn't hold back her laughter. Nyang Nyang, this servant found that you are really naughty now. The person Gu Yueyin didn't want to see the most was her Nyang Nyang, but Nyang Nyang insisted on rushing over to let her see. Under her eyes, she was afraid that others wouldn't know how proud Nyang Nyang was now. In addition, for the sake of the imperial concubine, the emperor couldn't even attend morning court. This was the first time since ancient times that the emperor was able to put aside court affairs. Even she, who was deeply loved by the emperor, didn't have this special treatment. Hearing this, Shin Yueji couldn't help laughing. She probably felt it was funny. That's right, since she has the ability to scheme against mother, then she should have the ability to take Ben Gong's show off. Nyang Nyang, is there anything wrong with your body? If the emperor knows that you ran around again, I'm afraid that the emperor will not let this servant look after you next time. Shin Yueji rolled her eyes and glanced at Gao Dezhong who came with her. Gao Gonggong did not say anything. What are you afraid of? Even if the emperor wants to find trouble, he will definitely find Gao Gonggong. Who made Gao Dezhong the emperor's favorite person? Gao Dezhong was about to cry when she mentioned it like this. He lowered his head. Nyang Nyang, don't blame this servant for being talkative. Your body is weak now and it's better not to run around. Otherwise, if the emperor asks, this servant will really be blamed. Don't worry, I'm just going to see Empress Jijia and talk to her. After comforting her, I will naturally come back. His Majesty won't make trouble for you. Sitting in the carriage, Shin Yueji comforted her gently. The current auspicious Harmony Palace was very different from before. If it was before, the palace would be surrounded by palace maids and eunuchs. But now, looking at the fallen leaves on the ground, it seemed as if they hadn't been swept since morning. If I didn't see the words Auspicious Harmony Palace written on the signboard, this servant would have thought that I had entered the cold palace. Double Happiness snorted. Shin Yueji sat there and did not move. She saw a little palace maid running out of the room in panic. She winked at Doublespeak. Double Happiness immediately went forward and blocked the palace maid's path. The palace maid looked up and when she saw Shin Yueji's carriage, she was shocked and quickly knelt down. Greetings, Imperial Consort. Why are you so rash? Did something happen? Where is your Empress? Empress. Empress, her delicate face turned red and there were tears in the corner of her eyes. Under Shin Yueji's scrutinizing gaze, her head suddenly hit the ground heavily, making a series of loud noises. Just hearing it made people's scalps tingle. Chapter 583. Your Highness, please save us. Your Highness, please save us. Your Highness, please save us. Seeing her like this, Shin Yueji was puzzled. What's wrong? Why did you ask for help? Did you do something wrong? No, the little maid shook her head violently. We didn't do anything wrong. It's Her Majesty, it's her, she cried bitterly and said, it's Her Majesty who has gone mad. Sob, Her Majesty has gone mad. She beats us whenever she sees us, and she even broke Xiaozui's leg. Half of the servants in Xianghe Palace were beaten to death by her. We didn't dare to resist. Her Majesty didn't allow us to run away. She said that if we ran away, she would kill our parents who were far away outside the palace. Sob, 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 Imperial consort, I beg you to save us servants. This servant's parents died a long time ago after giving birth to this servant, so this servant dared to run out. Nonsense. Her Majesty is generous, gentle and virtuous. You didn't do anything wrong. How could she treat you so cruelly? Because Her Majesty knows that the former Empress is the child of Lady Murong and someone else. She knows that Lady Murong and the Prime Minister have broken up, so she is so angry. Your Highness, I'm not lying. If you don't believe me, you can go in and have a look. Even Nanny Dang was not spared. One of Nanny Dang's arms was chopped off by Her Majesty. Looking at the little maid kneeling on the ground and crying bitterly, Shin Yueji actually believed her. She glanced at her lightly and was a little surprised that Murong Yun chopped off one of Nanny Dang's arms. After all, Nanny Dang was her confidant. Mao Ran remembered that Nanny Dang was arranged by Murong Yun to be by her side. No wonder Gu Yueyin was so cruel. Your Highness. Double happiness stood behind her. Her Majesty is crazy now. If you go in, will she hurt you? With you by my side, she doesn't even know martial arts. How can she hurt me? But she doesn't care about anything and kills indiscriminately in the harem. Does she not want the position of Empress anymore? If Feng Zhouqing were to find out about this, even if he wanted to protect her, it would be difficult. Now that something like this had happened to the Gu family, Gu Wei's entire heart was on Murong Yun. He had no time to care about Gu Yueyin at all. He had even resigned from the morning court. In a short period of time, it was estimated that he would not interfere with court matters. At this time, Gu Yueyin was digging her own grave. Shin Yueji walked past the little palace maid kneeling on the ground. Go and treat your wounds first. I will go and take a look. Thank you, Imperial Consort. Thank you, Imperial Consort. After the little palace maid thanked him, she got up from the ground and ran off without looking back. Her body was not without injuries. Her hind legs were dragging and trembling with every step she took. It looked like her legs were injured. Standing at the entrance of the main hall of Xianghe Palace, he could hear countless miserable howls and pleas from far away. The screams of the palace maids and eunuchs rose and fell. Shin Yueji stood outside the hall. Just hearing these voices, she couldn't help but frown. At first, she thought that Gu Yueyin was so calm, as if nothing had happened. This was not like her character. Now, after hearing the miserable movements in Xianghe Palace, she realized that according to Gu Yueyin's character, how could she continue to be quiet? The servants in Xianghe Palace were all being tortured by her. So when she entered, there was no need for any report. Chapter 584. The sound she heard outside the hall made her frown. But when she entered the hall and saw the mess inside, she frowned. There was not even a crack. She was not born to be a merciful and compassionate person, but she was definitely not someone who would willfully kill the innocent. A sharp-eyed servant saw her and quickly crawled towards her. Imperial concubine, save us. Imperial concubine, save us. Her Highness is crazy. She wants to kill us. She wants to kill us. Shuang Shi stood in front of her, so that the servant, who was covered in blood, did not grab her clothes. But Gu Yueyin still saw that under her bloody face, there was a bit of familiarity. The old voice was very hoarse and not as sharp as before. She slightly lowered her eyes and tentatively called, Deng Mama. Deng Mama suddenly raised her head and looked at her. Imperial concubine, it's me, it's me. Imperial concubine, save me, save me. Her hand was empty and hung in the air. She was covered in blood and there were a few scratches on her face. It was a ghastly and frightening sight. Shin Yueji. Gu Yueyin did not expect that Shin Yueji would come to protect her. Her voice became a bit sharp and she stared at her fiercely. She was the one who carried out the torture and her body was stained with a lot of blood. But the blood did not belong to her, but belonged to the servant girls who were tortured by her. When those servants, who were tortured to the point of death, saw her coming, their eyes showed a look of begging for mercy. Some of them could not speak and could only lie on the ground, gasping for breath, just like the dead. They were about to die. Shin Yueji's face was calm and indifferent. What is the Empress doing? Gu Yueyin smiled coldly. Can't Imperial concubine Shin see what Ben Gong is doing? Why? Are you here to see me make a fool of myself? Are you proud? Yesterday, the Empress told Ben Gong that it is taboo to abuse private punishment in the harem. Ben Gong doesn't know what these servants have done. So that you are so cruel to kill them. Cruel. Ha ha ha, she suddenly laughed. Shin Yueji, do you know what is cruel? I am the most cruel person. Don't you already know? My mother was such a pure and noble person. Did you know that she had an affair with another man and gave birth to that bitch? Do you know that in one night, I became the laughing stock of the world? Do you know that not only in the capital, but even in auspicious Harmony Palace, this consort has heard what they are talking about? They were secretly discussing in the corner whether I was also Prime Minister Gu's daughter or not. They even laughed at Prime Minister Gu and wanted him to have a blood test with me. Pa, she casually picked up a servant girl who had been tortured to the point of death and slapped her across the face. The maidservant spat out another mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, unconscious. I didn't expect Murong Yun to be such a person. She disgusts me. How could my mother be such a disgusting person? She and another man. You only remember her disgust, but not the slightest bit of good about her, right? All right. As if she had heard something funny, Gu Yueyin suddenly laughed out loud. Good. Shin Yueji, what do you think is good about her? She tortured her own daughter so cruelly, is she good? Not only is she disgusting, she is also the most vicious mother in the world. Chapter 585. She didn't treat the late Empress well, but she doted on you and didn't allow you to suffer any grievances. Whatever you wanted, she would find a way to get it for you. In the entire capital, who wouldn't be jealous when your name is mentioned? If I had known that she was such a disgusting person, I would rather she wasn't my mother. If I could do it all over again, I would never let her be my mother. Shin Yueji raised a sarcastic smile at the corner of her mouth. This was Murong Yun's little daughter, who had been in the palm of her hand since she was a child. She was doted on by thousands of people. Because of her words and her unhappiness, she didn't know how many times she would be beaten and how many times they would abuse and insult her in a day. At that time, she really didn't hate and didn't know what it was. She only knew that she desperately wanted to be loved by Murong Yun. She wanted to let her know that she was also her daughter. She hoped that one day, she would change her mind and remember her. She could remember that apart from Gu Yueyin, she had another daughter. She worked harder than Gu Yueyin and expected more love and care from her than Gu Yueyin. She didn't know what it was to hate. She only knew that if one day, she could be loved by Murong Yun and enjoy being a mother, she would love to touch her head and praise her. Even if it was just this one sentence, she would be willing to die. Shin Yueji's eyes were a little red. She thought that she had faded a lot, but now that she thought about it, it was still a knot in her heart. She took a step back and looked directly at Gu Yuein's cold and contemptuous face. The reason why you're complaining now is because you haven't tasted the feeling of being ignored by her and being bullied by thousands of people. Ignored. Hasn't she ignored me enough? Shin Yueji, she already regretted it. Do you know that she already regretted it? She regretted it before, and now that she knows that Gu Yueyin is the flesh and blood that she gave birth to with that man, I don't know how much she regretted it. I'm guessing that she now deeply regrets treating Gu Yueyin like that for me. Now, I'm sure that she already wants to transfer all the pain and tiredness that she suffered from Gu Yueyin to me. Shin Yueji did not speak, because she knew that Murong Yun was such a person. In the past, she had thought that her birth prevented her from being with the man she loved, so ever since she could remember, her mother had never been nice to her. In her mind, this mother hated her and never liked her. Now that she knew the truth of the past, she regretted everything she had done to herself. Even Gu Yueyin was no exception. She could even kill Gu Wei so ruthlessly, what more her? In fact, Gu Yueyin knew her mother better than she did. She had spent more time with her than her and received more love from her. How could she not know what kind of person she was? Speaking of which, that silly sister of mine is really pitiful. Perhaps she was a little tired. Gu Yueyin sat on the steps and laughed foolishly. That silly sister of mine. Before her death, Murongyun felt that she was a daughter born from her father. Because of her birth, her mother had never liked her. Not only mother doesn't like it, but I don't like it either. Chapter 586. That silly sister of mine. When she was alive, Murongyun felt that she was the daughter of her father. Because of her birth, her mother had never liked her. Not only did my mother not like her, but I didn't like her either. When I was young, I didn't understand why they treated her that way. They even pitied her. When I grew up, bullying her had become an unavoidable habit. She was a dispensable existence in the Prime Minister's residence. Not to mention us, even the lowliest servants, dogs, and cats didn't need to care about her. Now that she's dead, I'm afraid she won't know why Murong Yun loved me so much, but hated her so much. She must be thinking, why is there such a big difference between the two of us, even though we're both Murong Yun's daughters? Hearing this, she suddenly chuckled. Unfortunately, I'm afraid she'll never know the answer she's been thinking about all her life. Because she's already in her eternal rest, she'll never understand that it was all a misunderstanding. My mother, who should have treated her with such sincerity and love, used this love on me. She's destined to be a plaything for the rest of her life, spurned by everyone. In the past, Shin Yueji hated the woman in front of her. She hated her because she was her younger sister and she was her older sister. She hated her unreasonable ways. She hated that she relied on her mother's love to disregard her as her older sister and snatched away everything that belonged to her. She even had to persuade herself repeatedly that she was her younger sister and that she should tolerate and give in to her. Later on, she saw her together with the woman she loved. At the last moment, she even snatched away her brother-in-law. She didn't care about the position of empress, but she snatched away the only man that mattered to her. Now, seeing her in this state, Shin Yueji sighed softly. She suddenly looked at things a lot calmer. Perhaps from the moment Murong Yun regretted it, or perhaps from the moment she knew of Feng Zhiqing's duplicity, she knew that she had never slept with him, and she knew that they had no children. Fate had given her a second chance. Her purpose in life was to take revenge. However, when she found out the truth, everyone had their own ending. Their ending was in their own hands. She was just an outsider and had no right to interfere. She squatted down in front of Gu Yueyin and looked down at her pale, flustered, and resentful face. Although Gu Yueyin is dead, it doesn't mean that she lost. From the beginning, you were the one who lost. When Gu Yueyin raised her head and looked into her eyes, Shin Yueji smiled. Do you know why you lost? Because you were selfish, arrogant, vain, and had no respect for your superiors. You think that everything you set your eyes on is yours. You are not allowed to covet what belongs to you. If someone tries to steal what belongs to you, you will eliminate them regardless of the consequences. As for your biological parents, you knew that they loved and protected you, but you hated them to the bone for your own selfish desires just because of a seemingly scolding sentence from them. Gu Yuan, I've never understood how someone like you was able to survive all this time. Is it because God, after giving you all the honor and glory, wants you to have a taste of how miserable it is to fall into the dust from the highest point? Is it so hard for people to accept it and feel despair? God, and me. Chapter 587. It's none of your business. So what if you're gloating over my misfortune? I'm the Empress of Phone Country, the master of the harem. In this harem, I have the final say. So what if you're favored? Prosperity is fading. His Majesty is only interested in your face and the power of your Shin family. So, I'm not jealous of you at all. Not at all. Anyone who is favored by His Majesty is a joke. Gu Yuan smiled as she stood up from the ground. Looking at the servant she had destroyed, she angrily lashed him with her whip. Last night, when the Emperor came to see me, I always thought he was here to coax me. He was still the same as before. He said that I'm his Empress, the Empress for life. He said that he and I will look down on Phone Country. But in the end, once Murong Yun's matter was exposed, he asked the servant beside him to announce that I'm not of good birth and I've disgraced the name of the Empress. He asked me to hand over the Phoenix Seal. Shin Yueji, he's so heartless to me. Shin Yueji was shocked when she heard these words from Gu Yuan's mouth. She didn't expect Feng Juqing to be so heartless. The Gu family didn't collapse. It was just that Murong Yun's scandal was exposed. The daughter Murong Yun gave birth to with another man was already dead. Gu Yuan was indeed the daughter of her and Gu Weixing. Although her reputation wouldn't be good because of Murong Yun, the position of the Empress of Phone Country was still unshakable. He actually, really wanted to destroy her. She seemed to understand why Gu Yuan didn't care about anything and killed indiscriminately in Xianghe Palace. She wasn't afraid that Feng Juqing would find out and destroy her. So he had already sent someone to tell her that he wanted to destroy her position as the Empress. Gu Yuan staggered to Shin Yueji. Shuangxi wanted to stand in front of her, but Shin Yueji glanced at her. Gu Yuan put her hands on her shoulders. She was smiling, but her eyes were filled with tears. Do you think that's all he's heartless to me? No, there are many, many more. I only found out now that the things he did in secret were all his doing. Shin Yueji, you will never know how much I love him. I love him more than my sister. I can die for him, I can abandon everything for him. But what did he give me in return? He wants to cripple me for you. How ridiculous. The man I love is going to cripple me for you. Just like how he wanted to cripple Gu Yuqin for me. Come to think of it, I'm much better than Gu Yuqin. At least, he spoke to me in a tone of discussion. But to Gu Yuqin, he didn't even bother to discuss with her and directly executed her. The position of Empress is above all. What do you think? She laughed loudly. Isn't it just the position of Empress? Shin Yueji, he wants you to be the Empress. Elder sister has been the Empress for 3 days and this consort has been the Empress for 2 months. I wonder how long can you last? I wonder how many more women will be sent to the palace after this. I wonder how long your beautiful face will be able to be maintained. Is it that when he gets tired of you, another beautiful woman will replace you? No, Shin Yueji lowered her eyes and looked at her as if she was looking at a dead person. Chapter 588. No one will be able to shake your position as Empress. Hearing this, Gu Yuan raised her head and looked at her. You spent so much effort to snatch something from someone else. How can you hand it over so easily? I want you to continue being the Empress until you die. Gu Yuan's eyes widened. She didn't know why, but she felt scared when she looked at Shen Yueji. She seemed to think of the moment when Gu Yuqin was dying. She also looked at her with such hatred. She didn't understand why she would associate the person in front of her with Gu Yuqin. She stepped back in embarrassment. Shen Yueji, what do you want to do? I won't do anything. I'll just sit and wait for you to dig your own grave. Gu Yuan, you are the Empress of the country. Everyone in the world will despise you for what happened today. You must have been the one who tried to assassinate my mother when she went out, right? A trace of panic flashed across the young girl's face. But now, Shen Yueji knew everything that she had done. She knew that everything that she had done behind Shen Yueji's back was clearly seen by Shen Yueji under Shen Yueji's eyes. So what if I did it? I can't touch you, but can't I touch her? Shen Yueji, I advise you to let your parents go out less. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that they can live safely. Slap. Knowing that Shen Yueji would hit her, Gu Yuan's face was tilted. She smiled coldly and her eyes were full of sarcasm. Are you angry? I'm going to lose everything soon anyway. But I don't mind taking advantage of this time to make trouble for you. You're right, I'm selfish. I can't bear to see the people I hate live better than me. I can't bear to see it. When the man I like likes you, he'll make you the Empress. Do you think everyone is like Gu Yuqin, who can be bullied and manipulated by you without daring to resist? Shen Yueji's face turned cold. If my mother is missing a head, believe it or not, I can make you beg for death in this harem. Do you think you can touch me? Gu Yuan laughed proudly. Even if I'm abandoned by the Gu family and betrayed by everyone in the world, there's one person who will never betray me. Lunar Shadow. The man's handsome face appeared in front of her. But when he looked at her, his gaze was as cold as ice. Only when he looked at Gu Yuan, his gaze was filled with love and obsession. Her hand caresses the man's handsome face, feeling the man's mood change, the whole body's inhuman, because of her intimacy, and become fluctuating. I still remember, back then, Yu Ying's entire body was covered in blood as he collapsed at the entrance of the Prime Minister Manor. There were so many people coming and going, and all of them were treating him like a snake or scorpion, thinking that he was a dead man. At that time, the Empress also saw it. She also said that it was inauspicious for a dead person to fall in front of the Prime Minister's mansion, and ordered people to throw him somewhere else. Gu Yuan's expression didn't change. So what? Then, there was a heavy rain, and the first Empress came back from outside. She happened to see this man who was on his last breath. At this point, Gu Yuan's expression suddenly changed. Other than Gu Yuqin and her, no one else knew about this, not even Lunar Shadow. She suddenly looked at Shen Yueji. How did you know about this? Shen Yueji didn't answer her question. Instead, she glanced at the arrogant man. Chapter 589. A trace of bewilderment appeared on his fair face. I also know that it was the late Empress who used all her strength to carry him back to her residence. She took care of him for 3 days and 3 nights before barely saving his life. But before he woke up, you went to find trouble with Gu Yuqin. Seeing that this man was rather good-looking, you ordered people to move him to your residence and make him your slave. Yu Yin's straight back suddenly became extremely stiff. Gu Yuan's face was completely drained of blood. Facing Yu Yin's gaze, she actually couldn't refute. Unfortunately, when he woke up, the first person he saw was you, and he thought that you were his savior. From that day onwards, he became loyal and obedient to everything you said. Even if he had to climb a mountain of daggers or go through a sea of flames, it would only take a word from you for him to willingly charge forward for you. But he forgot, in the 3 days that he was unconscious, who was the one who took care of him. He helped you deal with Gu Yuqin together, framed her, and tortured her together. With every word that Shen Yueji said, the man's body would tremble a little. His dark eyes rolled and his handsome face instantly became extremely pale. His palms trembled slightly and the hand that was holding the sword became unstable. His dark eyes looked at Shen Yueji. His thin lips moved slightly. Endless pain, regret, shock and disbelief flashed across his eyes. All sorts of emotions intertwined. The truth of the matter. Was it really like this? The person who saved him was not Gu Yuqin, but her. How do you know all this? Shen Yueji, how do you know all this? Even father doesn't know about this. Only Gu Yuqin and I know. You don't have much contact with her, how do you know all this? What I've done will be found out sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. Now, do you think Yuin will still help you protect you? Yuin, Gu Yuqin reached out and wanted to pull him. But the man's gaze was as cold as ice. If a moment ago, he was like fire to her. But now, he was like ice, a stranger like an enemy. She was frightened by the look in his eyes. Yuin, what do you mean? Do you want to betray me too? I admit, the person who took care of you for those 3 days was Gu Yuqin, the person who saved your life was also her. But she only took care of you for 3 days. You spent the rest of the time recuperating in my courtyard. I was the one who ordered people to serve you. Otherwise, it would be impossible for you to be alive. Yes, in the end, she ordered people to take care of him, but she raised him like a dog. However, seeing that she was his savior, Yuing had always been obedient to her words. No matter how she treated him, he would silently endure it. He had followed her silently, taking care of her and protecting her for so many years. Go with her to deal with her sister. He thought of the things he had done to that woman. The man felt a sharp pain in his heart. Unknowingly, he did not know how many things he had done to hurt her. She was his savior, and he should have protected her, but he treated her like this, biting the hand that fed him. His heart felt like it was being pulled by someone. It was so painful that it was suffocating. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. Why did he treat you so well? Why did he obediently endure everything that you did to him without any complaints or regrets? That's because he saw you as his savior. Now, he knows that the person who saved his life was killed by his own hands not long ago, and that he played a significant role in it. Chapter 590. Your Highness, do you think he will stay by your side and never betray you? Karma is a cycle. It's not that karma doesn't exist, but it's not the right time yet. You've been the superior and worshipped empress for 2 months. Now it's time for you to taste the feeling of having everything taken away from you. What do you think? How does it feel to be abandoned by your own family? Shen Yueji stopped looking at the woman on the ground, smiled and left. Seeing this, Shuangxi hurried to follow her. Just a moment after she walked out of Xianghe Palace, she heard footsteps behind her. Without looking back, she knew who it was. She stopped and waited for the man to come forward and block her way. Who are you? Why do you know all this? Since it's happened, someone will know about it. You didn't repent in front of the late Empress's body, but came to me to ask me. What do you mean? She saw the change of the man's expression. You helped the Empress in the imperial study yesterday. What did you do to the late Empress's body? I don't think I need to tell you. The imperial study was heavily guarded. There were so many highly skilled secret guards standing guard. Yet, you were able to effortlessly eliminate those dark guards and secretly control all of this. This is enough to show how powerful your martial arts are. It's a pity that you followed the wrong master and did the wrong thing. I didn't know she was the one who saved me. All this while I thought. Gu Yueyin has been high and mighty since she was young. You're just a passerby covered in blood. With her noble status, do you think she would be so kind as to save you? Carry you back to the Prime Minister's mansion? Because he knew she wouldn't, he believed Shin Yueji's words when he saw the expression on Gu Yueyin's face. His emotions were complicated, and the tension he felt made him feel uncomfortable. Compared to the fact that he had killed his savior, Gu Yueyin had been lying to him all this time, which was more difficult for him to accept. He had always thought that the person who saved him was Gu Yueyin. This thought had never changed. It had always been like this. But now, Shin Yueji told him that the person who saved him was Gu Yueqin, and that person, you don't have to feel bad. After all, Gu Yueqin is dead. Isn't the person you like now Gu Yueyin? Don't you men like arrogant and despotic young ladies who look glamorous on the surface and make you want to protect them? No one would like someone like the former empress, who was weak and useless, who would only hide and cry when something happened. Even if she was bullied, she did not dare to refute. Even if you knew that she was your savior, what could you do? Double happiness. Your Highness. Let's go. Yes. Shuangxi followed him obediently and didn't look at the man's reaction. Yushin Yueji had walked a long distance, but the man behind her was still standing there, looking lost, as if he hadn't moved at all. Your Highness, how did you know about Yuing and the late Empress? I dreamed of it. You dreamed of it? Shuangxi opened his mouth in shock. Dream? Was Her Highness a prophet? Shin Yueji smiled and glanced at her. Of course. Haven't there been a lot of strange things happening in the palace recently? Chapter 591. Maybe the late Empress thought I was good and told me this in my dreams. She told me this in my dreams. Shuangxi was speechless. Her ladyship was awesome. However, Empress, this Yu Ying's martial arts are really very high. This servant has been sizing him up earlier, but I am actually unable to determine how much inner energy he has. Normally, those who are able to conceal their inner energy are all top-notch experts. I didn't expect that there was such a powerful person by the Empress side. No wonder he is so fearless. Even without the Gu family to back him up, I think the Yuin alone would be able to bring him out of the palace. Gu Yueyin comes from a good family and has top-notch looks. What's so strange about the heavens favoring her? Shin Yueji sneered. Hearing the meaning behind her words, Shuangxi pouted. So what if she comes from a good family? She can't compare to you now. The Gu family has 2 daughters, but you are different. You are the only one in the entire Shin family and you are the general's wife's treasure. Moreover, in terms of looks, how could Gu Yueyin compare to you, Your Highness? Your Highness, you are the true beauty that can topple cities. His words made Shin Yueji laugh perfectly. Find that little maidservant who ran out earlier. Your ladyship wants to find her. Harmony and Gongxing is such a big thing. With Gu Yueyin there to suppress it, no matter how badly those servants are tortured by her, they don't dare to say a word. Since she attacked Mother first, then don't blame this consort for pushing behind the scenes and spreading the news, especially to that palace maid. The more the better. Yes. Shuangxi was about to go look for her when she thought of the man just now. Your ladyship, do you think Yuin will still help the Empress? Yes. Shin Yueji answered without hesitation. Shuangxi said, his martial arts are so good, he will help, but he won't use his full strength like before. After all, even if he knows the truth, his love for Gu Yuan is real. He has liked her for so many years, how can he not like her after knowing the truth? That's not like him either. This servant understands. I'm going to the Huayong Palace to see Concubine Ro. After you're done, find me there. Yes. Huayong Palace, Your Highness, why did you tell Murong Yun all of this? Lu Hui helped Lu Qingru change her clothes. These days, perhaps it was because of Imperial Concubine Xin, she could clearly feel that her ladyship's mood was much better. This is what she owes Qin, Lu Qingru smiled faintly. The face of the woman in the bronze mirror was as white as snow. Her delicate face was still beautiful even without any makeup. She caressed her face with her hand and the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. A cold glint flashed across her eyes. She saw Murong Yun's repentance, and Qin naturally saw it too. Now that she had finally escaped from the Gu family's cage, if she was touched by Murong Yun's current appearance again and reconciled with her, she subconsciously clenched her fists. Her Qin could only be hers. Everyone in this world would lie to her and betray her, but she wouldn't. She wanted Qin to know that in this world, she was the only one who treated her sincerely and loved her. Those people, no matter who, including Murong Yun, her biological mother, she would never let her Qin soften and forgive her again. Chapter 592. She could forgive the pain Murong Yun had caused her. She wouldn't. Look, do I look good in this? Your Highness is so beautiful, of course you look good in anything. It's just that. But what? Lu Qingru looked at her. Your Highness, your body has been nurtured for the past few days. This servant can clearly feel that your mood is much more cheerful than before and you like to smile. However, your clothes are still too simple. Look at the imperial consort, she is always bright and beautiful. Why don't you dress more beautifully too? The imperial consort should like this kind of gorgeous. Because she is the imperial consort of a country, she naturally needs to wear gorgeous clothes. In fact, in her heart, she still likes these simple clothes. Lu Qingru smiled and applied some light makeup on her eyebrows. I heard that she is sick. At the mention of this, her eyebrows were filled with worry and a touch of killing intent. Her heartache was obvious. Your Highness, this servant also heard that it was a minor cold caused by Murong Yun and the others at the imperial consort's place. It is said that after Murong Yun fainted in Phoenix Perch Palace, the Empress found out and left after taking a look, leaving her biological mother in Phoenix Perch Palace. In the end, it was Prime Minister Gu who personally came to pick her up. At that time, she hated Qin and doted on this daughter of hers. Now it seems that it is really ironic. She put on her clothes and said, "Come with me to Phoenix Perch Palace to see Ji. Yes, Your Highness." Lu Hui prepared the things and was about to help her out when suddenly, she felt a weight on her back and her vision became dizzy. Lu Qingru's tranquil face slowly became blurry in front of her eyes. Her head hit the ground and she collapsed. Seeing her faint on the ground, Lu Qingru's expression did not change, but the gaze in her eyes instantly became as cold as ice. I said, "Don't bother me anymore. Holy Maiden, we are also under the orders of the Holy Mother to invite you back." The masked woman bowed respectfully and said, "Please do not make things difficult for us, Holy Maiden. Do you think, now, I will go back with you obediently?" It was not easy for her to reunite with Qin, and this time, she did not plan to leave. When Qin died, she was disheartened. She could listen to that woman. But now, Qin was still in this world. She wanted to continue to stay by her side and never be separated from her. If the Holy Maiden is reluctant to part with Shen Yueji, this subordinate can bring her back to the northern underworld. This way, the Holy Maiden can be with her forever. The woman spoke like a machine. Other than respect, there were no other fluctuations. Hearing this, Lu Qingruo's eyes flashed, and she seemed to be satisfied with her suggestion. If he brought Qin back to the Dark North Kingdom, she would be able to stay with him forever. We will never be apart. In the Feng Nation, she was still Feng Zhiqing's woman in name. She could not do anything. After all, this was not the Xianming sect's territory. However, things were different in the Feng Nation. That place was filled with people from the Xianming sect. Not only could she protect Qin, but even Mo Wuxiang couldn't snatch Qin, away from her. However, this thought only appeared for a moment before it was rejected by her. The light in her eyes, which had just risen, dimmed at this moment. Chapter 593. What she wanted was Qin's willingness. She wanted her to be willing. To make her happy, to make her happy. Not to force her to do something she didn't want to do. The veiled woman seemed to see through her concerns and said respectfully, I know that Saintess cares about Imperial Concubine Shen's feelings, but Saintess is the person Imperial Concubine Shen cares about the most in this world. Everything Saintess does is for Imperial Concubine Shen. I believe that Imperial Concubine Shen understands Saintess' good intentions. In Feng country, there is no one for her to miss. The scenery of Northern Underworld is more beautiful than Feng country. When I go to Feng Qi Palace, I will have a good talk with her. If her words reveal her yearning for Northern Underworld. She suddenly smiled, I will take her and leave Feng country together. The veiled woman heard this and her face under the veil finally showed a gentle expression. No matter what, even if Shen Yueji was unwilling, she had to kidnap her and return to Northern Underworld with Saintess. Saintess had been urging them for a long time. They couldn't stay here any longer. When Lu Hui woke up, she was still lying on the ground. She rubbed her sore neck. Strange. Why are you lying on the ground? Concubine Shen. She couldn't help but panic when she didn't find Lu Qingru in the main hall. Fortunately, when she entered the inner hall, she saw Concubine Shen changing clothes. She sighed, Concubine Shen, you almost scared me to death. I thought something happened to you. Lu Qingru looked at her with a smile, what could happen to me? Didn't I tell you just now that I wanted to come in and change clothes? The clothes I wore just now are a little old, so I asked you to wait outside. Look at you. What's wrong? Did you lose your memory? She kept feeling that something was wrong, but seeing that Lu Qingru was safe and sound, Lu Hui shook her head. No, no. This servant just suddenly fell asleep. I thought that someone had sneaked into our Huayang palace to harm Her Highness. She said with lingering fear. Lu Qingru looked at her in amusement, don't worry, I've already severed my ties with those people from the Jianghu. They aren't the kind of people who don't know what's good for them. After all, this is the Imperial Palace, those people from the Jianghu would more or less be afraid of Feng Zhiqing. As she spoke, she had already changed her clothes. Let's go and see There's no need to go, I'm already here. Shen Yueji's voice came from outside. Lu Qingru was startled when she heard what Shen Yueji said. Then, her face lit up with joy. She quickly walked forward and grabbed Shen Yueji's hand. You came to see me. Her eyes were bright and filled with surprise as she looked at Shen Yueji. I had nothing to do in the palace, so I came to see you. Lu Qingru looked at her worriedly. I heard that you caught a cold and I have been worried about you. Have you taken any medicine? Are you feeling better now? Of course it's to take the medicine. Look, I've come here personally. Isn't that good enough? Shen Yueji looked at her, amused. Lu Hui, who was at the side, could not help but laugh. This servant had just told her ladyship that after Shen Guifei caught a cold, her ladyship was so worried that her face changed. He insisted on visiting your highness. Speaking of the cold. Shin Yueji frowned and pulled her hand out of Lin Mingya's. Lu Qingru was stunned. Her empty hands no longer had her warmth. Her heart was filled with disappointment. Your body is weak. It's better not to infect you with my cold. At that time, both of us will fall sick. What should we do? Chapter 594. With her explanation, Lu Qingru's depressed mood improved a little. Qin, you know that I never care about these things. Saying that, she took her hand again. Take good care of yourself, don't hurt yourself again. Do you know that I am really worried about you? I know, of course I know. Shin Yueji smiled. Don't worry, I care about my body more than anyone else. Actually I came here to ask you something. She glanced at her and suddenly spoke. Her expression was serious, and there was no longer a smile on her face. Realizing that something was wrong, Lu Qingru gave Lu Hui a look. Lu Hui said respectfully, this servant will go brew some tea for Her Highness and Imperial Consort Shin. After Lu Hui left, Lu Qingru held her hand. Qin, what do you want to ask me? Last night, Murong Yun suddenly went crazy in the Phoenix Perch Palace and almost killed Gu Wei. Do you know about this? Lu Qingru's eyes flickered, but she still answered truthfully, I know. Originally, she was living well in Phoenix Palace and was in a coma for a period of time, but that was all because of me. Later, Shuangxi left for a period of time, and when she came back, she suddenly went crazy and said something wrong. Everything was wrong. She was wrong. During this period, someone entered Phoenix Palace and talked to her. Shin Yueji did not deliberately mention names. But the two of them understood each other for many years, and Lu Qingru knew that she was doubting herself. Qin, are you doubting me? Thinking of this, she also asked the same question. In front of one's most beloved person, there was nothing more unacceptable and breathless than her doubting herself. In the entire harem, I have to admit that I haven't made any friends who are willing to sacrifice so much for me. Even if there are a few who feel indignant for me, it's impossible for them to have the ability to come and go as they please in my Phoenix Perch Palace without anyone knowing. Even though the side hall was not my residence, there were still many secret guards guarding it. No matter if it was the people from the palace or the Shin family, father had arranged for the secret guards here to protect my safety. But when I asked them, they all said that no one entered the side hall. They talked to Murong Yun. In the past, this sentence, Shin Yueji did not say it out, but Lu Qingru still knew what she wanted to say. Since she had already said it to this point, she felt that there was no need to hide it at all. That's right, it's me. More than a month after you passed away, I had already found out about Murong Yun and Qianhe's affair from back then. Qianhe is a member of the Jianghu. He is famous in the Jianghu. There is no one in the Jianghu who doesn't know of his existence. You also know that I have made friends with a group of people in the Jianghu. They also have a lot of prestige in the Jianghu. As long as I want to inquire, I can find out what happened in a few days. After you died, I was disheartened. I only wanted to avenge you, to take revenge on Feng Zhiqing, to take revenge on the Gu clan. After I had avenged you, I would leave with you and accompany you. Qin, she held Shin Yueji's hand nervously. Do you regret it? Are you blaming me? You love Murong Yun, don't you? Because of her repentance, because she knows the truth of what happened in the past, because you also know the reason why she treated you like that. Now, in her heart, she must be regretting how she treated you. Chapter 595. She's only left with repentance and remorse. She wants to make up for the abuse and torture she had suffered. Qin, in the past, what you wanted the most was her love. She touched your head lovingly and praised you. She held you in her arms and gently called you Qin, But, Qin, I really can't forget. I can't forget the harm she had done to you. You are so kind. I know that in your heart, you must have forgiven her long ago. You, you don't have to feel guilty. Shin Yueji sighed. I don't have any feelings for her now. Whether it's Murong Yun or Gu Yuechin's mother, I am Shin Yueji now. My identity is the eldest daughter of the Shin family and the apple of General Shin's eye. I only have this identity. The previous Gu Yuechin is already dead. Do you understand? No matter what Murong Yun does, repent, die, or anything else, it has nothing to do with me. I won't feel sorry for her. I won't regret it. I won't even acknowledge my identity as her daughter. Really? Lu Qingru looked at her in disbelief. She really thought that her Qin came to question her. At that time, she was really afraid. She was afraid that if Qin knew about this, there would be a gap in their hearts. She was even more afraid, it wasn't easy for her to have her again. If their relationship worsened because of this, she would be better off dead. That was why she admitted it so quickly. But she didn't expect that Shin Yueji would answer her in this way. Her words didn't seem to blame her at all. Instead, it was on her side. She felt warm in her heart and smiled. Qin, do you know North Sea? North Sea. The name, Dark North, made her subconsciously think of Mo Wushang. He should be on his way now. She didn't know if there would be any danger on his way back. She realized that she really wasn't worried about this man at all. Even after he had left for so long, she only thought of him now. If Lu Qingru hadn't mentioned Dark North, she reckoned that she wouldn't have thought of him for a long time. Why did you mention North Sea out of nowhere? A thought flashed across her mind. It was the words that Hong Fui had said to her. The masked woman who was wandering around the Huayang Palace was a member of the Dark North Xianming cult. He had said that Lu Qingru's identity was not simple, so he had asked her to be on guard against her. At first, she did not think much of it. A person who could sacrifice to such an extent for her, she would not suspect her no matter what. If she really wanted something from him, she wouldn't. Thinking of this, she smiled. When I returned to the General's mansion, Father seemed to have mentioned Dark North to me. General's mansion. Shin He. Yeah. Shin Yueji smiled. Seeing the smile on her face, Lu Qingru didn't know why, but she felt that it was an eyesore. Qin, are Shin He and the others very good to you? Of course it's very good. They made me feel what it means to be a parent. They give their best to their children, and they don't want me to suffer the slightest bit. In front of them, power and benefits are nothing compared to me, their daughter. This is also the reason why I am so indifferent to Murong Yun. Because I have parents who love me. As long as I am alive, I will never let anything happen to them. In the future, I will take care of them for the rest of my life and treat them as my own parents. Chapter 596. Lu Qingru couldn't stand it anymore. No matter how well they treat you, you have to remember that you are not their biological daughter. She didn't understand why her mood changed so quickly. Just now, she was talking to her with a gentle smile, but now, her eyes were frozen, and even the smile on her face was gone. But Lu Qingru didn't realize it. You have to remember, their daughter is Shin Yueji, but you are not. One day, they will know that you are Gu Yueqin and not Shin Yueji. And you happen to be a member of the Gu family. The Gu family and the Shin family have been enemies for many years. Do you think they will still treat you sincerely? I'm afraid that they can't wait to get rid of you. What's wrong? Facing Shin Yueji's words, Lu Qingru also knew that her words were too heavy. She reacted and smiled with her pale face. I'm sorry, Qin, I might have been too emotional. The scene of the Gu family treating you like that is still vivid in my mind. I was just too worried about you, if the Gu family also. After listening to her explanation, Shin Yueji knew that her death had a great impact on her. Thinking about the rest of her life, it wasn't that there was no one who treated her sincerely. She patted Lu Qingru's hand. Don't worry, I know what I am doing. No matter how they treat me in the future, even if they know my identity, at least, during the time I was Shin Yueji, they treated me sincerely. The real Shin Yueji is already dead, and now I am the one who replaced her. This is also what I owe them. Qin, now, the Shin family's position in your heart is far higher than Murongyun's, right? How can they be replaced by Murongyun in my heart? Lu Qingru heard this and laughed at herself, restraining the hatred in her eyes. When she said that she didn't care about Murongyun and the Gu family, she didn't know how happy she was, because this way, she belonged to her alone. But she didn't think that without Murongyun, there was still the Shin family. She only spent a few days with the Shin family, but in her heart, the Shin family's position was far higher than Murongyun's. For a moment, she felt that she had been thoroughly ridiculed. There would always be so many people appearing, there would always be so many people coming to snatch her Qin. What's wrong? Why was his face so pale? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? She probably noticed that Lu Qingru's expression wasn't quite right, especially her face, which was frighteningly pale, like a piece of paper. Shin Yueji could not help but call out worriedly. Lu Qingru grabbed her hand and called out, "Xinv, will you hate me? What's wrong? Why are you asking all of a sudden? I mean, if one day, I do something that makes you unhappy, or even makes you angry, will you hate me? Will you never forgive me? That depends on what it is. You've done so much for me. If I don't forgive you just because you made me unhappy and angered me, then wouldn't I be too inhumane?" Shin Yueji comforted her. It's been so long. We've been friends for so many years. I know what kind of person you are. If it wasn't necessary, you would never hurt me. Chapter 597. Yes, Qin is right. If I have no other choice, she smiled. Even if I have no other choice, even if I am forced to do it, I still won't bear to hurt my Qin. When Shuangxi arrived, she saw that her concubine had already eaten in Huayong Palace. The corner of her mouth twitched as she looked at the two of them who were as close as old friends who hadn't seen each other for decades. Didn't Lu Qingru have a close relationship with the late empress? For the sake of the late empress, he could even disregard his own family. Moreover, he did not treat anyone else well except the late empress. Why did he treat her consort with such a strange attitude after such a short period of time? It was so strange that she didn't know when Lu Qingru and her concubine's relationship had become so good and intimate. "Concubine, I've done what you asked me to do. I've also found the maidservant. If I'm not mistaken, His Majesty should have received the news by now." Shin Yueji took a bite of the pastry. After listening to Shuangxi's words, she lightly responded. Lu Qingru looked at her in confusion. What did the Empress do? Nothing much. Murongyun's matter is hard for her to accept. The discussions and sneers about her in the harem are rising one after another. She can't vent her anger, so she started with the servants of Xianghe Palace. Yes, concubine Ro, you may not know, but the servants of Xianghe Palace have been tortured beyond recognition. Some are dead, some are crippled. It's really tragic. Oh. It seemed to be within her expectations, but at the same time, it seemed to be beyond her expectations. Lu Qingrou's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. This Gu Yueyin, whenever she encounters something, she will either smash things or vent her anger on others. Now that Murong Yun knows the truth, she can't wait for her daughter to die. The Gu family is in a mess. In order to coax his daughter, Gu Wei doesn't even care about the court affairs. Is she still digging her own grave? Do you need my help again? I'm afraid that Rower will play Murong Yun to death with too much force. Speaking of which, I still want her to survive and continue to be her empress. I want her to collapse in the position of empress. If she wants to get down, she can't get down. However, Yu Ying, who is by the empress's side, is a thorny problem. On the way here, she heard from the secret guard that Yu Ying had returned to Auspicious Harmony Palace. His purpose for returning to Xianghe Palace was obvious. It must be to return to Gu Yuan's side. Even if he knew the truth about Gu Yuqin being his savior, he wouldn't feel anything for her. Gu Yuan, on the other hand, was the master he had accompanied for so many years. From the initial misunderstanding to the many years of companionship, his fondness for Gu Yuan was not unworthy of mention. I know the man Jill is talking about. Don't worry, leave it to me. I can get rid of him for you. Yu Ying's martial arts are extremely strong. Even those hidden guards who father had arranged to protect my hidden guards by my side might not be able to gain any advantage in his hands. Rower, have you forgotten what you promised me before? She subconsciously made guesses about the bad things. Lu Qingru naturally knew what she was worried about. Don't worry, Since I've promised you, I will never get involved with those people of the pugilistic world. Chapter 598. All these years, I've kept a low profile and made a lot of friends. Don't worry, there's no interest between us. If I ask them to help me, they won't refuse. The empress of a country came to the harem and abused her private punishment. She cruelly punished the servants, broke their arms, destroyed their limbs, and was extremely cruel. Soon, Gu Yuan insulted the empress's magnanimity and kindness. The news of her wantonly torturing the servants in the harem spread everywhere in the harem. The most anxious person was Gu Wei of the prime minister's residence. When Gu Wei learned of this news, Murong Yun had already locked herself up for a day and a night in a desperate attempt to survive. Rather than saying that he locked Murong Yun in, it would be better to say that during the period of time when Murong Yun was locked in, from the madness at the beginning to the quietness at the end, there was no movement at all, just like a dead person. When the servant girls brought the food, they shouted and shouted from the outside, but the people inside did not respond at all. In the end, they had no choice but to call Gu Wei over because they were worried that something might happen to Murong Yun. At this moment, Gu Wei stood outside the door and looked at the locked door. He ordered someone to open the lock and then pushed the door in. When the door couldn't be pushed, he knew that Murong Yun was locked inside. For a moment, he was angry and distressed. How many times had he swallowed his anger? How many times had he indulged her? Wasn't he good enough for her? He was so sincere to her that he dug out his own heart for her to see. Yun, after so many years, you and I already have 3 children. Ask yourself honestly, am I not good enough for you? No matter what you want, I will find a way to give it to you. Tell me, how can I not be as good as that dead man? I admit that I lied to you, but that's because I love you too much. If I didn't love you, why would I lie to you for so long? For so many years, you have another man in your heart, and continue to live with a dying man. Do you know how much my heart hurts when I look at you and think of that man every day? But I can't. I know that you love her. I've already forced you to stay by my side. I can't deprive you of this last bit of right. Yun, I know that I lied to you. I lied to you for so many years. I lied to you about what happened back then. I lied to you about Er's identity. I admit that I was selfish. Even if you hate me and will never forgive me, all of this is because I love you too much. Did you hear that? I love you, I love you. Gu Wei could not help but shed tears. He really liked this woman. From the first time he saw her, he fell in love with her. At that time, the Murong family had not yet fallen. She was the eldest daughter of the Murong family. The name of Murong Yun was well known throughout the capital. Whether it was her beauty or her talent. He still remembered the first time he saw her. The young masters and young mistresses of the capital had arranged to go on a lake trip. At that time, she was sitting in the cabin, dressed in white and beautiful, like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. With just one look, he believed that she had charmed countless men, and he was not the first. Unfortunately, at that time, her heart had already belonged to someone else. That man was a man of Jianghu. 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 Chapter 599. They fought and killed every day and treated the four corners of the world as their home. How could they compare to young masters from aristocratic families like them? She lived a life of luxury and wrote poems. At that time, he only needed to ask the people around him to know who she was. Only then did he know that she was the famous young lady of the Murong family, Murong Yun. In the past, he had only heard of her name. He had also heard that there were many young talents in the capital who fought with each other for the chance to catch her eye. At first, he didn't think much of it. After all, she was just a woman. Young masters of aristocratic families like them could get any beauty they wanted. In the past, they were the ones who picked the beauties, and the beauties threw themselves at them. How could they fight to the point of bleeding for a woman? He sneered at this. No matter how beautiful a beauty was, she was just a bag of skin. He believed that he was not the kind of man who could not move his feet because of a beauty and was willing to give up. A man should build a career and have his own ambitions. He should not be so useless because of a woman. Later, it wasn't until later that he caught a glimpse of the legendary eldest daughter of the Murong family. She was indeed very beautiful. In this world, there were very few women who could compare to her. He was surprised that there was a woman in this world who could make him fall in love with a single glance. He couldn't deny that he was really moved. His line of sight followed her every move. She was sitting on the cabin. It was a very, very small ship. It was not as luxurious as the big ships they had. There was a man sitting inside. He was dressed in black and held a sword in his hand. The man's face was cold but handsome. He saw that the arrogant woman who looked down on the capital was teasing the cold man with the sword. She smiled mischievously like a 7- or 8-year-old girl. The black-clothed man did not move at all. In the end, the girl was a little dispirited. She pouted and took the initiative to hug his arm. Why don't you smile? Why are you like an ice cube all day? You're so cold that I'm almost frozen to death. Do you know? Every time I sneak out to see you, I wear a few sets of clothes. He didn't know if the girl was too mischievous or if she said these words seriously, but she didn't make the cold man in front of her laugh. Instead, she made him laugh. Gu Wei could still remember how he could not help but laugh when he looked at Murong Yun, this elegant and refined woman. His laughter attracted his friend's attention. His friend nudged his elbow. "Brother Gu, have you taken a fancy to her? Let me tell you, the eldest miss of the Murong family is famous for her beauty. In this world, there are countless men who have taken a fancy to her. To tell you the truth, even I am no exception." But unfortunately, the eldest miss of the Murong family already has someone else in her heart. Do you see that man in black? This is the man she likes. You see, if it was any other man, he would have been so happy that he couldn't help but hug this beauty. But this Qianhe, he's as cold as a block of ice. He's in the arms of the Murong family's eldest miss and he doesn't move an inch. He's like Lu Xiaohui. He still remembered asking, this Qianhe, what is his identity? Oh, him. He's just an assassin in the Jianghu. You know, these Jianghu people fight and kill all day long. They call the world their home and don't have a place to stay. Chapter 600. Every time, he takes orders. Whoever gives him the most money, he will take the order and live off of it. I don't know what's so good about this Qianhe that Miss Murong would fall for him. An assassin. He smiled disapprovingly. His beautiful lips curled into a sarcastic smile. What's so good about being an assassin? He lives on the edge of a knife. Maybe his enemy is more powerful than him and he will lose his life there. That's right, who said it wasn't? I don't know what eldest Miss Murong is thinking. You say that there are so many young and handsome men in the capital, for her sake, any one of them would not take a concubine and would only be willing to marry her. Such a great honor had never been bestowed in any other place. But this Miss Murong has fallen for an assassin. Sigh. How did Miss Murong meet this man? About that? I don't know. It seems that he was being chased and was seriously injured. He hid in Miss Murong's room and threatened her with a sword. But who would have known that the Murong clan eldest lady was not like other women who were so frightened that their faces turned pale and they screamed. Instead, her expression did not change. She pushed away the sword that was pressed against the man's neck and bandaged his wound. Other people save the damsel in distress. But when it comes to Miss Murong, it becomes a damsel in distress. Don't you think it strange? Later on, the man said a lot more, but Gu Wei couldn't bear to listen to any of it. Instead, he waved his fan and smiled as he made a bet with him. Brother Qin, do you believe that in less than 3 days, I will be able to woo the Murong family's eldest daughter? He could still remember the way the man looked at him. The man looked at him up and down and suddenly laughed. Your brother Gu is famous in the capital. If you dare to say that you are the best, no one would dare to say that they are second. But, do you think you can win Miss Murong's heart in 3 days? I'm afraid it won't be easy. All the women in the world are infatuated with you, Brother Gu. Other than Miss Murong, I am absolutely willing to believe that no one can escape from your clutches. If you want to get your hands on this Miss Gu, I'm afraid, it'll be a little difficult. Gu Wei didn't take his joke to heart at all. Instead, he smiled slightly and said, a challenging woman is interesting, isn't it? If it had been so easy to woo the eldest miss of the Murong family, she would not have been surrounded by so many talented youths in the capital. Even women are fighting to imitate her, so how bad can she be? He had been alone for more than 20 years. In these 20 years, it wasn't that there wasn't a woman who could make him look up to her. However, it was just a glance, and he didn't plan to continue to get this woman to accompany him. Compared to power and influence, women were not worth mentioning in the slightest. Everyone in the world loved beauties, but he loved power. If a man didn't even have power, what was the use of beauties? It was just a decoration. But with Murong Yun's appearance, perhaps from the moment he saw her, he felt that he had fallen. Suddenly, he thought, what's so good about power? It would be better to have someone he liked by his side, someone who could accompany him, someone who could warm him up. That was what he wanted. On the first day, from the moment he saw her, he had pestered her. Chapter 601. She was accompanied by her maidservant as they took a shortcut home. Since they had snuck out, the way she and the little servant girl sneaked up to him like thieves made him, who was hiding in the dark, more or less amused. A stunning beauty like Murong Yun would be missed wherever she went. There were even some who were not afraid of death. In order to flirt with her, they would even throw away their lives. He was glad that he had chosen to follow her today. Otherwise, he would not have found out that there was a wretched man who had designs on her. That was the first time they had met. She thanked him in a soft voice with a hint of arrogance. She was different from those gentle and obedient women. In his heart, he liked her even more. Gu Wei's heart was filled with sweetness as he recalled the past. It was as if he had smeared honey on it. Yun, do you know? Ever since I spoke to you that day, all I could think about was you. In the past, I hated beauty. I always thought that beauty would ruin a man's great career. But ever since I met you, I no longer thought that way. If I can have your company for the rest of my life, so what if I ruin my great career? So what if I am from an ordinary family? For you, I am willing to do anything. From the first time I saw you, I fell deeply in love with you. I swore that I would treat you well for the rest of my life. But that man. My eyes have been chasing after you, but your eyes have always been on that man. You have never looked me in the eye. Yun, do you know how much my heart hurts? My pain isn't because my love for you can't be reciprocated, but because you like that man so much and treat him so well. For him, you tried to please him and put down your arrogance. You personally cooked for him and did so many things for him, but he was always cold to you and didn't accept your goodwill. He didn't accept everything about you. I feel unreconciled for you. I feel sorry for you. He placed his hand on the door. You are the woman I swore to protect and love for the rest of my life. How can I watch you become so despicable because of him? Even if you turn a blind eye to my goodwill, I firmly believe that one day, you will accept my kindness and my fondness for you. I'm sincere to you. Yun, do you still remember? It rained in the capital for 3 consecutive days. You didn't come out for 3 days. On the first day after the rain, the sky cleared up. In the end, when you came out, the first person you saw was me. This is fate between us, you know. Even God thinks we're right for each other. Although I don't know why you like that man, I know that you're not fated to be with him. Sooner or later, you will be Gu Wei's wife. That's why I'm willing to wait. Even if I have to wait until the seas dry up and the rocks crumble, even if I have to wait for an eternity, I believe that there will be a day when the sky will clear up after the rain. Yun, his big hand was still pounding on the door. Be good, okay? Listen to me and let me in. If there's anything, we can talk about it. Don't punish yourself like this, you know. The more you treat yourself like this, the more my heart hurts. For so many years, my feelings for you have never changed. How can I bear to see you torture yourself like this? Yun, listen to my advice. I know you hate me. You can do whatever you want to me, even if you hit me or scold me. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Provoking Body Claw Bookhouse for free. When you ordered people to pour 3 buckets of bone-chilling water on her, when she was shivering from the cold and didn't even have the strength to beg for mercy, when she could only gasp for breath and crawl on the ground like a dead person, not even able to cry, I even ordered people to boil 3 buckets of boiling water and pour it on her when she cried that she was cold. She screamed as she was scalded, and a layer of her skin peeled off. Murong Yun covered her face. Only now did she realize how cruel she had been. Chin was her and Ahi's daughter. How could she treat her like this? How could she treat their child like this? Chapter 603. Gu Wei, you already knew. Actually, you already knew all of this. You knew the truth of that year. You knew that Qin was my and Ahi's child. But why did you still admit it? Why did you hide it from me? Why did you tell me that you were the one who was with me that night? Why? Why? Why did you do this to me? Why did you lie to me? How did I offend you? Why did you have to destroy me? Ruining her happiness, ruining her Ahi, and even more ruining her child. The only flesh and blood of the two of them. Yun is it important? It's been so many years. That man's corpse has long become one with the earth. Even if you're with him, can he give you the life you want? He's a man of the pugilistic world. Every day, he fights and kills. His hands are stained with blood. Every day, he lives on the edge of a knife. You're the eldest daughter of the Murong family. You've been doted on since you were born. In the capital, you're the woman that all the geniuses in the capital want to protect. If you follow him, he'll only bring you everywhere. He won't be able to give you the life you want. Do you understand, Yun? All this time, you've been the one giving. He's never responded to you. Murong Yun kept shaking her head. Tears flowed down her swollen eyes. She finally understood why he didn't agree with her even though she'd chased after him for so long. It was because he'd said that she was the eldest daughter of the Murong family. They weren't suitable for each other. Their thoughts were different. He ran around every day. The world was his home. But she was different. She was used to living in luxury. Even if she chased after him because she loved him and was willing to accompany him, she was still a daughter of a rich family. Her body was delicate. She would complain about him every 2 steps. He said that her temperament was different from his. If anyone offended her, she would remember that person for the rest of her life. She would torture that person to death. She was too selfish and possessive. Although she didn't know why he had agreed to be with her in the end after chasing after him for so long, she didn't know why he had agreed to be with her. But before this, Murong Yun had always known that there was a woman who had caught her eye. Even though she had appeared in front of him much earlier than that woman, and that woman was just an ordinary farmer's daughter. She did not have an outstanding appearance, nor did she have a noble status, but his gaze had always followed her. She saw it, and her heart was surrounded by anger and jealousy. She ordered people to secretly kill the farmer girl and her family. Although he didn't go looking for her, she could feel that he was lost during those few days. Later on, when she accompanied him, he finally compromised and said that he was willing to be with her. However, he was used to the 4 corners of the world and would never marry into the Murong family. She agreed, and she was filled with joy. As long as she could be with him, she was willing to follow him to the ends of the earth. When her parents found out about this, they locked her in her room for 3 days. She went on a hunger strike for 3 days and threatened them that if they didn't let her be with Ahi, she would die. After all, she was her parents' only daughter. Soon, they compromised, afraid that something bad would happen to her. But Qianhe was a man of the martial world. He lived on the edge of a knife. They were afraid that if she followed him, she would be in danger. Chapter 604. Those enemies would definitely target her. The last and biggest concession they made was for Qianhe to no longer be an assassin. No matter what he did, they wouldn't despise him. As long as he didn't become an assassin and didn't kill people, only then could they guarantee her safety. She thought that he would not agree. Unexpectedly, after hearing her parents' words, he did not say anything but nodded in agreement. At that time, she was wild with joy. Of course, she knew what was the most important thing for an assassin. But at the same time, she did not expect that her Qianhe would sacrifice himself to such an extent for her. She was secretly happy that she did not like the wrong person. He was indeed worthy of being entrusted with the rest of her life. Later on, her sincerity finally moved him. He was no longer cold and indifferent to her. He would talk to her and call her name. Later on, he would gently and affectionately call her Yunner. To her, there was nothing better than her beloved man whispering softly into her ear, making her feel happy and reluctant to part with him. His kindness to her was seen by her father and mother. Slowly, they became satisfied with this cold-faced son-in-law. Compared to the smooth-talking young men in the capital, Chin-ho was indeed a man worthy of being entrusted with the task. Because he was absolutely loyal to his wife. He would only marry one wife. Once he married her, he would take care of her, love her and protect her for the rest of her life. That period of time was the happiest period of Murong-yun's life. Even when she was being fawned over by others and was carefree, she was not as happy as she was then. That was the man she loved the most. He loved her and she loved him too. She often said that he was a block of wood and did not understand romance. It was a man who coaxed a woman, but when it came to him, it was the other way around. She was the one who coaxed him. Later on, he remembered it in his heart. One night, when she was admiring the moon with him, she leaned on his shoulder and asked, "Ahi, why did you reject me before? Do you dislike me that much? Do you know that there are many men in the capital who like me? But I don't like them. I only like you." His lips curled into a smile and his large palms stroked her head. "I once thought of being alone for the rest of my life and never marrying. I have also thought of marrying a gentle and considerate woman, retiring from Jianghu and spending the rest of my life with her." He paused, as if he was jokingly teasing her. "Yun is such an arrogant and despotic young miss, I have never thought of it. What I need is a woman who knows how to run a household, not by me." Before he could say anything, she interrupted him with a punch. The man chuckled lowly, and his voice was low and gentle, "But now it seems that there is nothing wrong with it. If you don't know how to run a house, then let me do it." She was embarrassed by his words of love. She snuggled into his arms and muttered, "Who said I don't know how to run a house? Do you believe that I will show you how to manage the house in the future? Let me tell you, Chien-he, even though I've been spoiled since I was young, I'm not a piece of trash who doesn't know anything. For you, I can learn them all." People often said that when one recalled the past, it was like a knife. Once this knife pierced into one's heart, then no amount of torture could compare to this sharp knife stabbing into one's most fatal spot. Chapter 605. Seeing her stunned expression, Gu Wei put his arms around her shoulders. "Yun-he, do you know? That man doesn't really love you. You killed the woman he loves. The reason why he accepted you was to take revenge on you. Do you understand? He made you unable to extricate yourself and then gave you a heavy blow. I can't bear to see you being deceived by him and falling into his lies without knowing it. I did it for your own good. I admit that I lied to you. But if I didn't lie to you, how could you see the hypocrite in front of you? You are so outstanding, and that peasant girl can't compare to you in terms of status, appearance, or talent. That man, however, turned a blind eye to such an outstanding person like you. He only has feelings for that woman. This is enough to show that he can't do without her. And because of jealousy, you are jealous that the man you love is being coveted by others. You are jealous that you have been by his side for so long, trying to please him and taking the initiative to lower yourself to cater to him. But he still turned a blind eye to you. In this world, I am the only one who treats you sincerely. I am the only one who truly loves you." Gu Wei reached out and touched her pale face, his eyes full of emotion. "No matter what you do to me, I won't blame you. Hit me, scold me, or kill me. There was still a wound on his face and his empty ear, which was her doing yesterday. The wound on his ear had been bandaged, and even the scratches on his face had been smeared with medicine. But he looked very disheveled. He was no longer handsome and noble as he was when he was young. Time had finally brought some changes to his face. All these years, he was the one who had worried, hated, and worried about him. He had done everything he could to please her, but she had always hated and abandoned him. She had never taken him to heart, and she had never. Morong-yun stared at him in a daze. Suddenly, she reached out to touch the scar on his face. The man's face was filled with joy. His eyes were sparkling with tears. Does it hurt? Gu Wei held her hand. No, it's different, Yun-er. It doesn't hurt at all. It really doesn't hurt at all. As long as you are willing to forgive me, as long as, but soon, Morong-yun's eyes were filled with mockery and sarcasm. Is it painful? Do you know how much my heart hurts? How much pain did Chin-er feel? How much does my ahi hurt? Ha 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 ha. Can you even compare? Gu Wei, everything I had was destroyed by you. More than 20 years, you lied to me for more than 20 years. Why were the people closest to me the ones who died? Why weren't you the one who died? Why? She stumbled and fell backwards. Gu Wei felt pain in his eyes and quickly reached out to pull him. There was a dagger in her hand. She didn't stab her, but aimed it at her own neck. Gu Wei jumped in fright, his face full of worry. Yun-er, what are you doing? Good Yun-er, if you're unhappy, if you hate me, then come at me, even if you want to kill me. Even if you want to kill me, I won't fight back. But you better put down the knife quickly. Be careful, the knife is too sharp. Be careful not to hurt yourself. Yun-er, listen to me, listen to me. The man's voice was already very hoarse. His eyes were red. He was really afraid that Morong-yun would not be able to think things through and would do something that would hurt him. Chapter 606. No, Gu Wei, I don't hate you anymore. Really, compared to hating you, I should hate myself more. It's me who harmed Chin-er. It's me who thought I was infallible. It's my own wishful thinking. It's all me. Yun-er, let me out. I know that you're keeping me under strict guard. You won't let me out. Do you believe that I'll die in front of you if you dare to keep an eye on me? Yun-er, I'm really doing this for your own good. How can I let you out when you look like this? Be good and listen to me. Don't make a fuss, okay? I'll say one last time. Gu Wei, let me out. Otherwise, I'll die in front of you. Seeing that the sharp dagger had already been slashed across her neck, a large patch of blood appeared on her fair neck. Gu Wei was truly frightened. He hurriedly cried out, all right, all right, all right. I'll let you out. I'll let you out. Yun-er, don't make a fuss. Put down the dagger and I'll let you out. Seeing that the surrounding secret guards had retreated, no one stopped her. Morong-yun didn't even look at the man behind her. She resolutely walked away. Gu Wei stared at her departing figure in disappointment. She had left so decisively, so mercilessly. She didn't reveal the slightest bit of reluctance. All these years, everything had been wishful thinking on his part. It had been more than 20 years. His self-righteous love, was actually not worth mentioning in her eyes. She had never taken him to heart, no matter which man he was, whether he loved her or not. She had always been wishful thinking. Actually, compared to Morong-yun, he was the same. Even though he knew that her heart belonged to someone else, even though he knew that all the sacrifices he had made were unnecessary to her, he still wanted to be good to her. He had never regretted it. He didn't know where she was going. He didn't know if she would come back. However, he didn't dare to chase after her. He didn't dare to order his men to chase after her. The dagger was still lingering in his mind. The blood-stained dagger and the wound on his neck. He was really afraid that if he disobeyed her, she would really stab the dagger into his neck. From then on, everything. As she stumbled out of the Prime Minister's residence, Murong-yun had no idea where she had gone. The streets of the capital should have been bustling with activity, but now, she could not even find a shadow of a person. In the past, the capital city was bustling with activity. She still remembered how he would hold her hand and play on the streets. When she was tired, she would make a fuss and ask him to carry her on his back. Now, everything had passed. So many years had passed in the blink of an eye, but the loving scene of the past still appeared in front of her eyes. Murong-yun covered her mouth and squatted down by the roadside. Gu Wei's words were still vivid in her mind. He said that he had never loved her, never. He had only used her, but why did she believe his words? That man had clearly lied to her so many times, had lied to her for so many years. Why did she still believe his words? He, who believed her, had never loved her. The only reason he was with her was to take revenge on her, to avenge that peasant girl. That's right, in the past, his gaze had always followed that peasant girl. Chapter 607. Of course, she knew that he had his eyes on that woman. He didn't want her, the beautiful young lady of the Murong family. Instead, he fell in love with a poor peasant girl who had nothing, and even her looks were mediocre. She couldn't understand. If he hadn't fallen in love with her, she really couldn't understand what other reason she had to defend him and why he accepted her in the end, including the night when she slept with Gu Wei. When he found out about it, his expression was indifferent. When she said that she wanted to marry Gu Wei, his expression was indifferent as well. He was as indifferent as a stranger. The more she thought about it, the more Murong-yun believed Gu Wei's words. The only thing that could be explained was that, actually, he had never loved her. Even if he had agreed to be with her in the end, it was all her wishful thinking. He was just fooling her like a fool. He just wanted to take revenge for the woman he loved. Murong-yun hugged herself and cried bitterly. Why, Amitba? Standing in front of a pair of feet, Murong-yun raised her head with tears in her eyes. When she saw a monk in a monk's robe standing in front of her, her eyes sparkling with tears were fixed on him. Many years had passed. The monk in front of her looked familiar, but she could not remember where she had seen him before. Kong Yin bent down and helped her up from the ground. Madam Murong, why are you crying so sadly? This voice, it was also familiar. It was so familiar that Murong-yun forgot to cry for a moment. She looked at him in a daze. Have we met before? Madam Murong, have you forgotten about me? I have helped you in the dark when you were with Brother Chinha. It's you. Mo. Murong-yun cried out in shock. She covered her mouth in disbelief. No, you. Aren't you dead? You were with he. You. The man named Mo faintly smiled and reached out his hand to his face. With just a light stroke, a piece of fake skin was peeled off his face. This time, Murong-yun completely recognized him, but his face was full of scars. It looked shocking, as if he had been cut by a knife, or burned by a fire. She took a long time to find her voice again. You. How did you? In the fire, Brother Thousand River used all his strength to send me out. I'm very sorry, Madam Murong. Actually, Brother Thousand River should be the one alive. I should be the one who used all my strength to save him, and I should be the one who should die. However, Brother Thousand Rivers' face was burnt by the fire. He thought that his ugly face could not face you, so. Murong Yun never thought that today, 20 years later, she would still be able to hear these. She covered her mouth and couldn't believe it. But the man in front of her was so familiar to her. He was the only friend of Ahe who could talk to each other. The relationship between them was deeper than that of her. Nemo would never lie to her. Ahe. Ahe. When Madame Murong married Gu Wei, Brother Thousand River was disheartened. That's why he wanted to die. But he was so cold that I suspected that he had never loved me. He didn't care that I married you. Madame Murong, don't you understand? Brother Thousand River is a man of the pugilistic world. He lives on the edge of a knife. Compared to your noble birth, Brother Thousand River feels much more inferior. Chapter 608. Madame Murong is famous in the capital. Who wouldn't be moved by Madame Murong's beauty? Moreover, Madame Murong had saved Brother Chinha's life before. When all the women from the aristocratic families felt a sharp and cold sword on their necks, they were so scared that they turned pale and screamed in fear. Only you, Madame Murong, thought it was fun and chatted with Brother Chinha. Actually, Madame Murong has been in Brother Chinha's heart since that first meeting. If Gu Wei's words made her heart ache so much that she couldn't breathe, then Yin Mo's words almost made her heart stop beating. She almost couldn't believe what she heard. She took a quick step forward and grabbed Yin Mo's collar. What did you say? You said You said that he loves me. He has loved me since the first time he saw me. Amitba. Madame Murong, it's all because of fate. Then what's with that woman? That girl from a farmer's family, she. Brother Chinha lost his parents when he was born. However, as long as he could remember, he always remembered that he had a younger sister. However, due to some reason, his sister was kidnapped. He had been secretly investigating in Jianghu just to find out the whereabouts of his sister. She thought about that girl from a farmer's family. Actually, there were some similarities between her and Chinha. Although she wasn't as handsome as him, she was still a servant from a small family. However, at that time, she was jealous of him. That was why she didn't take a closer look at their similarities. So they were brother and sister, and she killed his sister with her own hands, and he had searched for information about his sister for so many years and finally found her, but she couldn't help but think about what Gu Wei said to her just now. He knew. In fact, he knew from the moment she started doing those things. He knew that she was the one who ordered people to kill his sister's family. It was her, but he didn't hate himself. Madame Murong, haven't you always been curious why Brother Chinha suddenly accepted you after rejecting you for so long? Why did he accept you after you killed that girl from a farmer's family? Before this, Brother Chinha had always thought that he was climbing up the social ladder and that he wasn't worthy of Madame Murong. You are the eldest daughter of the high and mighty Murong family, and he is only a Jianghu assassin. His hands are stained with so much blood, and he has so many enemies. Perhaps one day, he will lose his life. If you are by his side, you will only be a burden to him. This is not something he wants to see. But because of your own selfishness, because of your own jealousy, you killed his sister. His selfishness was that if you owed his family a life, you would use the rest of your life to repay it. This kind of self-consolation made him accept you. So, the truth of the matter was this, then why? Nemo, tell me honestly, did you already know that the man who slept with me that night was a he, and not Gu Wei? Nemo didn't deny it. Yes, I do know. But I wanted to say it, but Gu Wei wouldn't give me the chance. You should know that Gu Wei's influence in the capital is unparalleled. Brother Qianhe and I are just some unworthy assassins. If he wanted to get rid of us, all he had to do was accuse us of some crime. Chapter 609. He was the one who killed Ahi. He was the one who killed Ahi. He wasn't an enemy at all. Murongyun broke down when she found out the truth. Over and over again, the words that she kept repeating in the center of her mouth were all the same. He was the one who killed Ahi. Her Ahi was killed by Gu Wei. Madame Murong's heart was on Brother Qianhe. How could Gu Wei allow Brother Qianhe to live and let Madame Murong worry about him? At this point, Yin Mo let out a long sigh. It's a pity that Brother Qianhe's true feelings were covered up like this. For Madame Murong, Brother Qianhe didn't even care about his own life. Even in death, he was thinking about Madame Murong. The reason why he allowed me to live was to protect Madame Murong. When I escaped, the first thing I did was to find out about Madame Murong. When I found out that Madame Murong had married Gu Wei and was well taken care of by him, I became a monk. I originally wanted to. He paused. Unfortunately, when I heard that the late Empress had been executed, I had no choice but to leave the temple. It looks like I need to tell Madame Murong the truth. Everything Brother Qianhe did was for Madame Murong. For Madame Murong, he was willing to bear all the curses, even if Madame Murong hated him. Murongyun stumbled backwards. This time, Yin Mo did not help her up. Instead, he watched as she fell backwards onto the ground. She looked as if she had lost her soul. Wrong. She had been wrong from the beginning. She had been completely and utterly wrong. She, Murongyun, was wrong. Madame Murong, no matter how good a relationship is, it cannot withstand scheming. This is a misunderstanding. Once it deepens, it will last for a lifetime. Both parties will have hatred in their hearts and they will be unwilling to accept it. The deeper the love, the deeper the hatred. Lady Murong, now that things have come to this, the promise I made to Brother Qian can be considered to have been fulfilled. All of you have your own selfish motives and I have chosen to tell you the truth of the past. Just treat it as my own selfish motives and I am feeling indignant for Brother Qianhe. I have known Brother Qianhe for so many years. No one knows him better than I do. Because of his inferiority complex, it has always been Madame Murong chasing after him. In the eyes of outsiders, it is Brother Qianhe who has always rejected Madame Murong. In truth, it is because he does not dare to accept Madame Murong's feelings. He's afraid that Madame Murong is just a momentary liking and a momentary curiosity. After all, there are many men who like you, and all of them are outstanding. All of them can give you a stable life that you want. But what Qianhe can give you is to make the world your home. He has a man's pride, but he won't take the initiative to marry into your Murong manner. He is a man with an indomitable spirit. He can fight for you, but he won't compromise. Chapter 610. In this world, there was no one more vicious than her, no one more vicious than her. Yin Mo, I've let Ahi down. I've let Qin down. I'm the most vicious woman in this world. I don't deserve Ahi's love. I don't deserve to live in this world. I'm the one who should die. I'm the one who should die. Murongyun's face was covered in tears. She covered her face in pain. He could have been fine. He could have reunited with his sister. Everyone should have been fine. But, because of her jealousy, because of her mistaken beliefs, because of her hatred, she realized that she had hurt so many people around her, people who cared about her, people who loved her deeply. Now that she thought about it, she had always thought that Gu Yuqin was her and Gu Wei's child. However, Gu Yuqin didn't look like Gu Wei at all. Besides, Gu Yuqin was a quiet person. Now that she thought about it, she was very similar to her Ahi. Also, her expression, her habitual frown, even when she was bullied, she didn't make a sound. She should have known. She should have known. She should have known that Qin was her and Ahi's child. She should have known that there was no relationship between her and Gu Wei. Why was it that when she found out the truth, it was already too late? It was her. It was all her. She was the one who gave birth to her child. The one who should die was her. It was all her. Madame Murong, you don't have to blame yourself. Actually, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just used by someone else. In this world, what you see may not be true. Speaking of which, Madame Murong is also a pitiful person. Amitba. The one who should die is not Madame Murong. I believe that if Brother Qianhe and Qin saw Madame Murong blaming herself, they would be heartbroken. The one who should die was not her. The one who should die was not her. His words brought Murong Yun back to her senses. She raised her head abruptly and looked at Nemo. The man's gaze fell on her. After so many years, he had changed a lot. He was no longer the talkative young man. If Qianhe was as cold as a rock, then Inma was as hot as a fireball. The man she liked was Qianhe. However, during that period of time, their conversations were pathetically few and far between. Most of the time, they were chatting in the northern part of Hainan with Nemo. He had helped her come up with many ideas. When she was tired and thought that she could no longer win Qianhe's favor, he was the one who comforted her and told her to persevere. He told her that he was only cold on the outside but warm on the inside. In fact, he still liked her. It was just that he didn't know how to express it. Because of her words, she followed him and continued to chase after him until he accepted her. He was once a handsome and cheerful young man. Now, when he raised his head, she could only see his scarred face. He looked so miserable and pitiful. On his face, there was no longer the smile that he used to have when he talked about wealth with her. There was no longer the smile that he used to put his arms around her shoulders and talk to her when he saw her. As time passed, everything changed. The scenery changed. People changed. Nemo, she called out his name softly. It was so soft that when a gust of wind blew, her voice dissipated. The man didn't know if he heard it or not. His eyes fell on her swollen red eyes and then on her pale face.